really why this chat means kind of a little bit more to me. And if you look up in my background, years ago, I wrote something called the sci-fi paper, which was the cyber physical or the connection between the cyber physical. Since no human on earth lives solely in the physical or in the digital world, we have a role to play in both sides. And that's, I think, why when we get this podcast kicked off here, this quick chat with you, Fredrik, I think it's important that we pay attention to both and how both influence each other and how the relationships matter. And I look back at my cybersecurity days, and somebody asked me, well, so what? Why? Why would location matter? Why would geospatial matter? Why do you connect geospatial to cybersecurity? What is the sci-fi story you talk about? And the answer was, you can't understand why someone would hack or breach a network, nation state, hacktivist, whether you know, unless you know the reasons why in which they're doing it. What is the motivator? It isn't always money. Sometimes, if you look back during COVID, sometimes it was opportunity and temptation around, a cure, hacking for a cure to a disease. Sometimes it was about food and famine. Sometimes it was science and technology and a space race. Sometimes it is about money, right? Sometimes it is about a ransom. Sometimes it's political. Sometimes it's motivated. But understanding a people, I think understanding a place, and I think understanding a culture help you better understand the motives around the world. And so, really, let's get this thing cracking. And Sydney and Fredrik, thanks for being here. Sydney, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, awesome. Hello, and welcome back to Navigating the Future, the T-Kartor podcast, where we explore the intersection of geospatial technology, data, and the real world.
And I guess I'm Red Curry, the guy who just gave a preamble? Is that what that is? When someone rants on for a good minute and a half about something, and maybe Sid will decide to keep it. Maybe she'll chuck it out in the beginning. But I'm Red Curry, and always happy to be with my co-host, Sydney Sanker, for another exciting episode with Fredrik Davidsson. Today we're talking about how maps connect digital data to physical reality and why geospatial is becoming the interface to the real world. I think that's kind of cool, Sydney.
Yeah, we are joined by Fredrik Davidsson. He's spent years working on projects that bridge online systems and physical environments.
Fredrik, welcome back. Great to continue the conversation from last week.
Thanks. It's great to be back. I'm really looking forward to continuing the conversation, and I think we've all agree. We can all agree on that these topics are close to our hearts. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's jump into it. So, why do you think maps are such a powerful interface between digital systems and the physical world?
A map is essentially a way to transfer a view of the world into a format we can consume and reason about. So when you attach data to specific places, whether it's infrastructure, people, risks, or movement, suddenly all the information becomes understandable. A map compresses complexity into something our brains are already wired for, spatial relationships. So instead of looking at disconnected data points, we see patterns, connections, and impact in the real world. That's why maps naturally become the interface between digital systems and physical reality. They make data meaningful.
Awesome. And on that note, how do maps influence how people understand and navigate their environment?
I think that maps shape how we understand the world because they give structure to our surrounding. When you look at the map, you instantly see relationships, whether it's near, what's far, how things connect. It turns chaotic, something's overwhelming environment into something you can reason about and directly affect how we navigate. A map reduces uncertainty. Where am I? Where can I go? What's the best path? When people feel certain, they move with confidence, whether it's a commuter catching a train, a visitor navigating a hospital, or military units planning a route. So the impact isn't just physical navigation, it changes behavior, efficiency, and even comfort levels in that space.
That makes me think, Fredrik, what happens when mapping, I guess, is wrong or incomplete. I guess I think misunderstandings, connections are lost. I think about local versus even global. And you look at some of the big trends in the world today, things that are happening, major news. I mean, when it gets wrong, it goes wrong, not just culturally, locally, but globally and cross-culturally, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with you, and we can have some examples from the news just within the last couple of days or weeks. But I mean, when a map is wrong or incomplete, it breaks trust, and people immediately feel it. So decisions become slower, movements become cautious, and in some cases the consequences can be serious. In civilian context, it might mean a delivery truck taking the wrong turn or visitors getting lost in a hospital. But in defense, critical infrastructure or emergency response, gaps in map can translate directly into operational risk. The map is often the source of truth that people rely on. So if the truth is inaccurate, every decision built on that um, it gives the wrong foundation for creating those decisions. And that's why maintaining accurate contextual up-to-date mapping is so important, because everything else sits on top of it.
I think you covered why spatial context really is so critical for decision making. We can talk about maybe some different industries, maybe how a whole systems approach is applied there. I mean, are there some different industries you think stand out?
I think the spatial context is critical because almost every decision has a where attached to it. So once you understand the location of something, its surrounding dependency, risk, and relationship, you suddenly see the full picture. I mean, a spreadsheet might tell you what is happening, but the moment you put the information on a map, you understand why it's happening, and what you should do about it. So the spatial context reveals patterns that you never see otherwise. So it's where risk converges, where resources are misaligned, where gaps or opportunities exist, how one change cascade through the system. Whether it's a city planning a new bus line, as I mentioned before, a retailer choosing a store location, or a defense operation coordinating units, the spatial layer often becomes the deciding factor. And without that context, decisions become isolated. But with it, it becomes a strategic power, I think.
You know, Sydney and I talked earlier about bridging digital and physical into real world projects, and we thought Fredrik would offer some great perspective here. Fredrik, maybe can you share some examples of projects that tried to bridge digital platforms with physical behavior or even movement?
Yeah, absolutely. So this has actually been a theme throughout my career. I worked on several projects that tried to merge digital behavior with physical world. One example was a collaboration with one of the biggest newspapers in Scandinavia. We tracked the location of people sending in news tips and also freelancers out in the field. So instead of sending a journalist blindly across the city when a story broke, the editorial team could immediately see who was already nearby and made the newsroom much faster and more responsive. We also experimented with augmented reality, and I'm going to get back to a lot of augmented reality throughout this talk. We visualized huge location data sets, like search data from Sweden's alcohol monopoly in augmented reality. So when you plotted thousands of store searches on a map, we suddenly saw behaviors emerging, clusters along major access roads, subway exits, and all places where people would search for these monopoly stores. And later I actually built a startup focusing on bridging brick and mortar retail with online behaviors. We monitored check-ins on Facebook, Foursquare, and a couple of other platforms, picking up movements, patterns, and sent targeted offers to someone who was close to that store. The idea was to merge digital intent with physical presence. So that's a couple of different examples.
Yeah, and you would say, I guess, what worked well in those projects, or maybe even give us an example of what didn't work well in those projects. Sometimes that's even more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the startup we actually had to shut down because we were a bit too early, and the entire check-in trend just it didn't go anywhere. What worked really well was the insight you get when you combine human behavior with location. The moment you put digital signals on a map, you understand the why behind movement and decision. For newsroom example, as I mentioned before, it was immediacy. For retailers, it was the converting intent into action. So you could actually get the intent of people getting closer to a store and then pushing them over into the physical store when they checked in on Facebook, for example. What didn't work, or what we underestimated, was the how sensitive people are about data. Today that would be obvious, but at that time it wasn't. Even if it was anonymized. We were early, privacy thinking hadn't matured yet, and I think we were not alone with that, because we could see platforms like Twitter and Facebook, they were totally open towards not honoring privacy. So the technology was often ahead of what organizations were ready for. They loved the idea, but they weren't always prepared to change the workflow to fully leverage it. But all of those early lessons fed directly into the work being done today within this segment. The principle hasn't changed. We're still connecting digital insights with real-world action, but the maturity, security, the operational readiness are on a completely different level today.
I'm wondering, how have maps been used in retail, smart cities, defense, or events to connect digital experiences to real-world action?
In retail, we, in our case, use maps to understand and influence footfall. Footfall is the number of people going in and out of stores. For example, identifying when someone was close to a store and then pushing offers to draw them in. It's a very direct bridge between digital engagement and physical movement. In cities, maps helped interpret behavior at scale, how people move through the transit system, where crowds form during events, how urban spaces are actually used versus how planners think they are used. In defense, maps are the backbone of situational awareness. You're constantly merging sensor data, human observation, intelligence from many sources into a single spatial picture. So every decision depends on understanding the physical context, I would say.
And what lessons did those projects teach about human behavior and technology adoption?
I think one of the biggest lessons is that people act on certainty. So when a map or a system reduces friction, where am I, what's happening, what should I do, people adopt it instantly. When it adds friction, it doesn't. So another lesson is that behavior is often predictable when you have spatial context. People cluster at predictable places. They repeat patterns. A digital signal reveals those patterns very clearly. And finally, technology only works when it fits naturally into an existing workflow. So, I think that I've built a lot of incredibly smart stuff, but unless it solves a problem at the exact moment the user feels that problem, it won't get used. And if it won't get used, it's useless.
So, how do maps influence how leaders and organizations make decisions compared to just the raw data?
One of the basic things about maps is it turns raw data into real world understanding. So I'd say that's more or less the definition of maps. But the leaders often don't need more information. They have all the information. They need better context. So when you put data on a map, suddenly you see the relationship, dependency, risks that are invisible in spreadsheets. A map answers the questions that matter. So where is this happening? What's around it? Who's affected? What do we do first? It creates an alignment in the room because everyone is looking at the same situation in the same way. That makes decisions faster, clearer, and far more grounded in reality, I'd say.
Why do spatial insights change priorities or outcomes?
Spatial insight changes everything because location gives meaning to data. So two issues that look identical on a report can have completely different consequences depending on where they occur. When you understand the geography around a problem, priorities shift instantly. So instead of ranking problems by size, you rank them by impact. And that often leads to very different decisions, I'd say.
This really just highlights maps as, I guess, decision engines. And, we talked about this a bit last week, but I think about, where do you see organizations struggling because they lack spatial integration? And I think about health insurance. I think about the decisions that companies in spatial finance, banks, different organizations that never thought to think spatially about solutions and risk. So maybe you could tell us a little bit, Fredrik, about where do you see organizations struggling because they lack that spatial integration?
Yeah, I think the question also includes the answers somewhat, because many organizations actually have the data. It just lives in silos. So logistics has one view, operations has another view, planners have a third view. So without spatial integration, they're essentially looking at different truths because they have the different data sets. So cities struggle with this. National infrastructure does it too. Even larger companies does it. They end up reacting to issues instead of understanding the bigger picture. So, but once you bring the layers together, so that's the key thing. Everything can be connected. You see the hotspot, bottlenecks, and cascading risks. And I'd say in most cases the clarity is impossible without the spatial layer. So you need to have the integration. As with the question, it's also the answer.
Yeah.
You need to integrate the different parts.
Yeah, and I think about the different industries and the different sort of segments, and how do command centers, planners, or even responders, first responders, use a map to act in real time in these types of situations?
For command centers and responders, the map is the operating picture. So it's where sensor feeds, human reports, unit locations, weather, terrain, and communication all merges into one shared understanding. And they're just not looking at the map, they're actually coordinating through it. So it becomes the heartbeat of the operation. So when something changes in the field, everyone sees it instantly, and they all adjust based on the same truth. That's what makes real-time mapping so very, very powerful. It gives people the confidence, and I talked about the confidence before, to act quickly and safely, simply.
I like the way you added that, the heartbeat, and you added the word people. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? And human behavior, and even in things like wayfinding. How do you think that maps and wayfinding systems influence how people experience, move through cities or spaces, and how they engage and interact? I want to reach into that human thing that you just mentioned.
Yeah, so I mean, wayfinding systems have a huge influence on how people move because they reduce uncertainty. So people uncertainty. So when you understand a place where things are, how to get there, how long it will take, you move with confidence within that space. So cities often underestimate how much human behavior is shaped by clarity. A good map or wayfinding system can shift foot traffic, improve flow through stations, or even change which routes people prefer. So it's just not navigation, it's psychology. People follow the path that feels obvious, safe, and even predictable. So yeah.
I like that. I'm going to use it in my next fun question for you. Why is navigation confidence such a powerful economic and social factor? And that's the psychology that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and I mean, again, confidence drives participation. If people feel unsure, whether they're in a hospital, an airport, or a busy city, they hesitate, they slow down, and sometimes avoid the place entirely. But when they feel confident, they try new routes, visit new stores, use public transportation more, and engage with the city in a more active way. So for businesses, that means higher footfall. For cities, it means better mobility and happier citizens. For vulnerable groups, which is important, it's the difference between independence and exclusion. So absolutely.
And while we're on the topic, I want to ask, how can wayfinding improve accessibility inclusion, and urban experience?
So going back to independence and exclusion again, I mean, wayfinding is one of the most powerful tools for inclusion because it levels the playing field. A well-designed system helps everyone: tourists, elderly people, people with cognitive impairments, and anyone experiencing a space for the first time. Clear information reduces stress and makes cities feel welcoming. And with digital tools, you can personalize it. So you have these cities street signs. They can't be personalized, but they are great fundament to bridge over to digital wayfinding in your smartphone. So when people feel safe and oriented, they participate more fully in the city. And I say that's the ultimate measure of accessibility.
And what role do digital maps play in shaping behavior at scale?
I find myself, mirroring the questions by starting the answer with the question. So, but anyhow, so digital maps they shape physical behavior more than we realize because you don't just reflect movement; they influence it. A few years ago, I worked on a government-funded research project that explored this idea. We collected large-scale geolocated movement data, things like Facebook check-in, and analyzed how people moved through the urban spaces. So we could see if a person checked in at one spot, we could calculate the likelihood of that person checking in at specific other places around the city. So that was the fundament of data that we were getting. What we found was pretty fascinating. Those digital traces weren't random. They revealed very clearly, very predictable patterns of real-world movement. You could actually use them to understand how people were going to move in the future or actually experience the city, where they would cluster, where they would be hesitant, and how different zones in the city were connected. So that insight becomes incredibly powerful for city planning. You could design better transit, smarter public spaces, and more innovative wayfinding by understanding how people actually move, not how we think they move.
So, how do you see digital twins and real-time maps evolving in, let's say, the next decade?
So I'm going to start with before we talk about digital twins, I'd like to highlight a major shift that is happening right now as well, which is connected to digital twins, but the rise of augmented reality. I talked about it before, but for example, on the defense side, Microsoft has been developing advanced military augmented reality goggles, AR goggles, that blend situational data directly into soldiers' field of view. On the consumer side, companies like Meta are pushing hard towards lightweight AR glasses that people could wear daily. When you see both directions, military grade and consumer grade, moving at the same time, it's clear signal that AR is going to be a major interface for blending digital data with the physical world. Now, with that in mind, a simple definition of a digital twin as well. Digital twin is essentially a digital model of a real-world environment, building a city or a system that stays updated with real-time data. It's a living reflection of reality that you can monitor, analyze, and use to simulate decisions. So I just want to have that definition and the connection to AR before going on there. So I say that over the next decade, these twins will evolve from static and periodically updated models into persistent system. Every sensor, vehicle, asset, or status change will update any digital twin instantly. And when we combine real-time digital twins with augmented reality, the experience changes completely. Instead of looking at the twin on a screen, you'll be looking through it, seeing real-time information blended directly into the physical world around you through the glasses. And I think that's going to be a breakthrough.
So, will maps eventually become persistent real-time mirrors of the physical world?
Yeah, absolutely. And digital twins could, in a way, be the mechanism for that. if a digital twin is a real-time digital representation of the physical world, then a persistent map in the interface you use to explore that twin, or it will be the interface to explore the twin. So we're moving toward maps that are always synchronized with reality. So where road closures, a weather shift, equipment failure, or a unit movement updates instantly through the glasses. So you see this through the digital twin in your glasses and immediately in the world ahead of you. So I think it will be a game changer.
All right, I'm dying to ask the buzzword question, but how will AI, here it comes, how will AI and sensors, Fredrik, how do you think they'll change the relationship between digital systems and physical environments? I think that's fascinating.
I mean, everybody talks about AI, but in this connection, I think that AI and sensors are enablers for what make digital twin and persistent maps possible. So different sensors captures reality, but AI interprets it, and the map or the digital twin becomes the operational picture of that. So the AI sensors and digital twin and augmented reality, they are connected to take the next step of how we see things. And we're entering into a world where physical environments essentially talk to their digital twins. Infrastructure reports its own status. Vehicles broadcast their movement. Buildings give live updates on occupancy data. And AI connects all these dots to insights, predictions, and also recommendations. So when we fuse the AR, the physical world becomes readable. So you'll be able to look at a piece of infrastructure, a route or a piece of equipment, and instantly see its condition, history, and what needs attention. AI generates that intelligence. AR delivers it directly into your field of view. So
I love it. And even the human reviews that it pulls offline. That's really cool. So with this privilege comes great responsibility, I'm sure, but how or what role should companies like T-Kartor be playing in this evolving ecosystem? I think that's important.
So this is my personal view of what companies like T-Kartor should do. It's not I'm not giving away any secret strategy. This is my personal thoughts on this. So just to be clear about that. My personal view is that T-Kartor's role is to be the foundation, the geospatial backbone that all these streams of real-time data connect to. So digital twins only work if the spatial layer beneath them is accurate, secure, and operationally reliable. So a lot of excitement around AI, sensors, and AR, which I've been speaking a lot about, depends on something very fundamental, a trustworthy geospatial infrastructure. Someone, and in this case T-Kartor, has to ensure that all data aligns, that the model stays consistent, that privacy is respected, that everything works in a mission-critical environment. So that's where T-Kartor has decades of experience, delivering mapping infrastructure to national governments and defense organizations that rely on this type of data on a day-to-day basis. As the future becomes more real-time and more immersive, the role becomes even more important. AR and AI will be the flashy front end, but the geospatial core is what makes the whole ecosystem work. And that part, the ecosystem backend, is where I see companies like T-Kartor play a big role to secure the data.
I love that. The backbone, the infrastructure, what's putting it all together and helping hold it all up. And I can't believe it. And we hit the 30-minute mark right on the nose for our audience. That went by really quick. And I really, really want to thank you, Fredrik. Thank you for your time today. Thanks again for sharing your insights on how maps bridge the digital and physical world. I think we've come up to a really cool point here where maybe we could even have another conversation about this and go a little deeper with you.
Yeah, thank you, Sydney and Red. I mean, it's been great talking to you guys, and as you understand, these are topics that I'm really passionate about. So I mean, I'm open for a lot of talks. So just you know where to find me. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow Navigating the Future on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, and share it with colleagues who care about geospatial, cities, defense, or digital transformation.
I got to thank Sydney and Fredrik again for joining me and joining our audience and giving and sharing these amazing insights. We'll be back soon with more discussions on how geospatial technology helps us navigate the future, as we say, navigating the future, right, Sid? And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great rest of your day.